Welcome to the Business of Travel, the official podcast of the Global Business Travel Association. I'm Laurie Scott from the GBTA Technology Committee, and I'll be your host for today's episode. I'm joined today by Meredith Smith, Principal Consultant at FESTIVE Road, and Ciaran Delany, CEO and founder from Hubli. Meredith, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Thank you, Laurie. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Meredith Smith. I lead the meetings and events pillar for FESTIVE Road. I'm based in the US, although I have experience globally, and as an ex-travel meetings, expense and payments buyer. Ciaran, over to you.
Hi, everybody. My name is Ciaran Delany, and I'm the founder of Hubli. So Hubli is a global simple meetings booking platform with over 200,000 spaces around the world. As my accent probably gives away, I'm originally from Ireland, but I'm now based just outside New York, and looking forward to the conversation today.
Thank you both. I'm looking forward to the conversation as well. And actually, an Irish coffee would sound wonderful right about now, Ciaran, but it's probably a little too early. So we will leave that for now, and we'll go ahead and jump into our conversation today. I want to get started talking about some trends. Meredith, why is there a need for simple meetings, and who is being impacted? You share a little bit with us.
So simple meetings, let's start with what they are, just to level set. Simple meetings are those that can be often defined as self-service. They don't need a strategic sourcing team, nor a full team of external planners coordinating the complexity like some events. A one-size-fits-all approach to both the intake process and MRF, meeting/event registration form, does not help win the hearts and minds of stakeholders in many of our client corporate environments. Many customers like the planning aspect and feel really strongly about it being a key part of their role and how they add value. M&E teams want line of sight of all the spend and the ability to leverage that spend in the very best interests of the company. So the fact that tools are readily available and implemented that accommodates both is such a great step forward. The simple meeting tool can be owned by multiple organizations. It's enabled by normally the technology team, and then it can be either run and managed by the procurement organization, or in most organizations that we work with, they have a separate operations team. That operations team is able to be the first line for the corporate for any questions, but most of the simple meeting tools these days also have full technical and booking support. So whilst like any implementation of a technology tool, I fear and feel, well, actually, I feel the fear of some of my clients who think to themselves, oh, it's going to be hard and I'm going to have to, do so much and work through it. But that honestly, not the reality we're seeing.
Okay, very good. Ciaran, you are very active in the industry. What trends are you seeing as travel and meeting volumes continue to increase?
Yeah, I think ultimately there's been, in the last number of years, there's been quite a shift in the macro environment in relation to how people work day to day, and also just the level of digitalization in our lives. So, there is now much more of a tendency for a certain cohort in organizations to have more freedom to work from home certain days of the week. There are some organizations that have quite a high percentage of the workforce that are distributed employees. And also there's been a big shift in general around digitalization. So ultimately, those kind of macro changes in our working lives have really grown the number of small, simple meetings that are taking place globally in organizations. And I think that's been echoed in the GBTA's own trends report for 23 this year, where it showed that 28% of business travel trips are actually for client or account meetings. And then 20% of business travel trips are actually for internal company meetings, right? So there's basically been a massive shift in why we're traveling. 48% of, nearly half of business travel trips, people are traveling for small meetings. And this is really driven by the macro changes in how we work. And a lot of the industry, players and different reports, like Skift, for example, had an article recently talking about how small simple meetings is become a key driver in business travel, and it showed that in many cases 80% of meetings that are being booked are now between 1 and 50 attendees. So suddenly there's a lot more demand. There's a lot more small meetings taking place, and that's really being filtered down the organization to the travel management and meetings teams in organizations, right? Where suddenly now it's a to-do list item, right? And they're now coming to this area, trying to solve it and trying to ensure that they drive, policy within the organization, give their employees an easy solution to use, and ultimately address their own, savings targets, let's say, and sustainability goals for the organization. So that's really been the change, compared to a few years ago. 3 or 4 years ago, there were some small meetings activity. Now there's a significant volume, and organizations are trying to get a technology in place to ensure that it's effectively managed.
Yes, absolutely. And I will say you are both speaking my language. As somebody who is on the buyer side, I will say that small meetings have been very elevated and get a lot of attention. And I think within organizations, everybody wants to do the right thing, right? They want to be efficient. They want to try to take some of that work off of the travel team or the meetings and events team. And they may think, this is smaller, I can handle this contract, I can take care of this, without a great deal of difficulty, and I really don't want to be bothersome. But of course, as we know, that can often present its own set of challenges. And so, I think simple is always a good way to start. And if we can overcome some of those challenges with a simple tool, that's a great way to go. Meredith, are there other challenges that you see within organizations for people who are trying to manage small meetings?
Yeah, I do. And first I want to thank Ciaran for inadvertently supporting one of the Festive Road macro trends, which was, it was always about the meeting, right? So and that means people are traveling to meet. What we saw, as we came out of COVID was, of course, the drive to have smaller gatherings. Now that stays with smaller amounts of people allowed to be in attendance, right, versus the 500, 600, 700 person meetings we used to see. I believe that, when we first came back, it was, the highest volume we've ever seen of an average of under 30 people, because that was the policy of many companies, right? No more than 30 people. But if you get that incredibly high demand for small meetings, you've got this high volume, low attendance, suddenly you're taxing resources that no longer exist in the world of the meeting planning agency. And they're scurrying with a short lead time and high volume to try and execute these, where at the end of the day, take a step back, and they need to? Is that really the strategic sourcing piece? If the answer is no, then put in a simple meeting tool and let them do it themselves. Let them do the search in the location where they need to be, see the pricing, have the contracting done. That being said, your question was, what are the challenges and why are we facing these? So in relation to a simple meeting tool, it's kind of still confusing and scary.
Okay.
Most know, right? And so most know that in order to source effectively, they'll have to articulate the business requirements. They need to clearly know the business needs and the desire to use a tool. So again, putting my ex-buyer hat back on, thinking through what has to be done to execute this, again, feels scary and hard work and new and unchallenged. So there is education that we, can provide, and all of the, industry will talk about in terms of, what's right for a company for a direct or a reseller agreement, what sort of interface needs there, how booking and technical support is ensured. And so we are so much better now than we were 3 months ago, 6 months ago, a year ago. There's documentation out. There's people that have done it before. There's us that anyone can come and talk to anytime they want some support. So I think that, we have challenges, but they're well able to be overcome. And whilst they'll continue to exist in various shapes and forms, eventually I see, and I'm kind of wasn't going to say this, but here we go. Using a simple meeting tool is going to be the same as using an online booking tool. It's not about the should I, but what's the difference between the innovative players out there and what's right for my company? I think that's the question people should be asking.
Yeah, maybe it's why wouldn't I instead of should I? It's this just becomes a natural maybe evolution as part of a managed travel program. So Ciaran, as we think about these challenges, can you talk a little bit more, maybe go a little bit deeper about the role that technology plays? And again, keeping true to that, technology can solve so many things. How do we do it and implement things in the most effective manner possible?
Yeah, absolutely. I think ultimately there's three very important stakeholders that the technology needs to help and simplify what they're trying to achieve, right? So you've got the travel management meetings team in the organization, you've got the employee searching and booking, and then you have the venue or the hotel receiving the booking and using the technology. So we spent years ultimately making it easier for all those stakeholders to use the technology and identifying what they wanted to achieve and building technology to provide that. I think starting with the travel management team or the meetings team in the organization themselves, ultimately, they have a lot of challenges. They really want to build, I suppose, a policy and governance and visibility around this segment, right? And that can vary depending on the organization, what sector it's in, etc. We're seeing some organizations who, want to have every booking approved via a workflow. So quite a, I suppose, a tight kind of policy around booking, and they're saying to us, can you facilitate this? So that's something that's part of their strategy, right? A key challenge really is also around just contracting. That's increasingly becoming a pain point where, a lot of organizations are seeing employees randomly booking locations, not signing contracts they shouldn't, not signing preferred agreements, preferred MSA agreements. So having a solution that automates that and gives a kind of a sense of the platform is actually powering those contracts, and our contracts are embedded in the technology. The employee doesn't even have to think about it. It's actually within the booking flow itself. That's become, as volumes have grown, that's become a clearer challenge, and we've created a solution to cater for it. And then obviously, sustainability, savings, how can you facilitate internal meetings? Is there a capability to sort of pull in the meeting spaces that the organization has in their own buildings and their own offices? Yes. That is something that we heard a lot about in the last kind of year. So we created an API which allows us to connect live availability of the meeting rooms in the own offices of the company itself. So there's quite a lot of challenges that I suppose the travel manager or the meetings head for the organization will want to kind of address. But then also you have to satisfy them, right? That's vital. But then you have the employee making a booking. Right? Like there's no point in having a brilliant platform designed for the travel manager, etc., and then the employee logs in and they don't, it's too complicated, right?
Absolutely.
So that's vital. And for us, we started in that area. So when we first launched our company, we were actually targeting people just finding us on Google search. So we spent years A/B testing and, looking at data, changing, testing, doing workshops with users. So we spent years kind of ultimately trying to help the employee search and book, which I think is great because it's sort of our DNA really is that experience for the employee. And we've layered on the technology for the travel manager. And then the third area is obviously the venue and the hotel themselves. If it's a hotel that's being booked, that's a key part of the process.
Sure.
So we would spend a lot of time engaged with global hotel groups and venues, sharing our technology, how we've automated booking, how we've simplified the process for RFPs, room blocks. And we're now starting to do API connections with these partners as well, with these suppliers, whether they're hotels or meeting venues. So really, it's those three stakeholders. They all have their challenges, but it's not, it's technology. That's what technology is designed for. I think some people tend to overcomplicate it. I think most people book a holiday with their family once a year,
Right.
which has flights and hotels and, car hire. And, so ultimately booking a meeting is not as complicated as we think. And it's the job of the technology partner to make it easy ultimately.
Absolutely. And I think the thought of a one-stop shop technology that's going to enable you to go through everything in a logical manner, ensure you've completed all of the check the box activities so that really you can focus on the meeting content, right? We want the securing the meeting to be the easy part. And for an employee who doesn't do that as part of their daily world, a technology that can make sure they've asked all the right questions can be very extremely helpful. So can you, Ciaran, we'll stay with you for just a minute. Can you share a couple of success stories from simple meetings and maybe also some lessons learned from, when you got started and what you've learned and what you've enhanced?
Yeah, and I think as well, Laurie, I think that ultimately the bookings are happening, right? Employees in like we still have our kind of direct to consumer channel, which is called meetingsbooker.com. And whenever we're presenting to a large corporate, we can show them examples of bookings from their employees where they've just searched on Google for a meeting room in New York and booked via Meetings Booker, right? And if they're doing that through us, they're doing that through direct, and they're doing that through other platforms. And so actually the activity is there already, which is interesting, right? But I think that's something that ultimately the organizations need to kind of embrace, and I think they know that now. I think a lot of companies already are very aware that there's a lot of activity happening off policy. Yeah, I think from a success perspective, we're very keen to sort of share case studies and do white papers, ultimately to show that it's not an aspirational objective or area anymore, right? Like having a simple meetings technology at scale globally is a reality for many organizations, right? And I think that's important to share that to other organizations and travel managers who are looking at putting together a proposal to have a technology. It's really to show that this is happening and this is what other companies are doing. So earlier this year, we created a white paper called the Simple Meetings Framework. And we had independent insights from Festive Road. And we had 6 travel managers who are very close to simple meetings, who shared their thoughts and their experience on what worked for them, what they learned, and what they would recommend for an organization to roll out a solution. So that's available to download on hubli.com. And that's a great starting point. And it's peer reviewed. It's not us talking, it's actually the 6 travel managers in different sectors. So I'd recommend people downloading that. And then 2 interesting case studies as well, we have available on our website. One is with BP, who was very much one of the first companies to really embrace a digital first solution for simple meetings. So we've quite a detailed case study in relation to their program, which for them, safety was a key factor, sustainability was a key factor within their strategy, and having transparency on pricing and savings as well. So they generated 18% saving globally on their meetings and group lodging expenditure, which was significant. And they also worked together with us to index hotels and venues that had safety criteria that matched their requirements.
Okay,
so
that's great.
there's now over 6,000 hotels and venues that have complied to their health and safety HSSE requirements, which was facilitated through the technology, right?
Yeah.
So that's an example of an organization that had a particular need, and then the technology provider ultimately is there to help them achieve that. And obviously sustainability is a big factor with BP as well, where they're using our where to meet solution to plan where to have meetings based on the lowest carbon consumption. And then a very different success story is a company called ASML. And ASML wanted to have very much a digital first solution. They wanted to have booking approval for every booking. They wanted to have central billing for the meetings and expense automation for the meetings. So, we were all sort of sweating with all these, requirements. But we worked together with them to build out technology catering for all those use cases. And in their first 18 months, they had over 8,000 simple meeting reservations, all self-serve, all with booking approval built into it, central billing. And they've saved over 90% booking time now using a technology versus manual sourcing.
Yeah.
So I think there are two great examples. And I think also, we're in the industry, I think we're often guilty of looking at, our area, right? And, policy and technology, etc. But I think the bigger opportunity for organizations is they're ultimately giving their employees a faster, more efficient way to collaborate and sell in person. And that is gold dust, right? If your organization has a faster way to get people together, to sell and collaborate, like that's a major competitive advantage, right? Like ASML, I think with their 8,000 bookings, it was over 170,000 people coming together. So I think that's what we're doing, right? That's what, as an industry, we're doing with meetings. We're helping we're helping organizations sell and collaborate faster and more efficiently, which is a big deal if you're a big corporate with thousands of employees.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a big deal. And you hit on a key point with the data that you need to support at the end of the meeting so that you can look at the data and talk about what may be an opportunity for next time. So Meredith, let's go back to you. I know you're working with some clients on some innovative approaches. How do you think technology can be harnessed to do something different with simple meetings?
So thank you for not asking me to predict the future main three technologies, because I probably would, and then you'd hold me to whether those predictions would come true. So for what we see, some of the new entrants, i.e. in the past 5 years, are really driven to provide services that truly make a difference and enhance the end-to-end meetings journey experience. What we see, not only are they authentic, personable, funny, and a pleasure to work with. And it makes me wonder, why can't buyers always have partners that they like? Like, does sincerely liking your partners count as being an innovation? It's sad, but maybe it is. But back to the technology specific enhancements, I really see clients challenging the intake process. And I'm I'm pretty confident they're going to push. The more they push, the closer we'll get to perhaps that better intake experience. As Ciaran said, and I fully support, and you didn't see my notes, so well done. Glad we're aligned. Carbon and cost estimators or calculators, I mean, thank goodness. So, I mean, if purposeful meetings is and should be at the core, and we're really ready to challenge the need to have an event by asking the purpose before you ask how many people, what's the budget, where do you want to go, then these elements of being able to understand cost before you, or what it's going to cost you before you even get to sourcing, and what's the impact on the planet to have this meeting in a particular location, understanding that and knowing before you even proceed is, to me, critical to what we have to be doing as responsible adults and meeting owners. So I see those two aspects playing a huge part. The technology around on-site meeting space and using that real estate optimally as part of your offsite, like the offsite and on-site meeting teams have often been completely separate. Real estate and facilities manage all that meeting space, and then the offsite team manages offsite. I challenge that is the way it should be. Why can't we maximize, optimize, utilize that space we have on site as effectively as what we do with offsite? And then, kind of thinking through how that will all work in regards to people that book offsite, and then a meeting room becomes available that's on site, that's perfectly suitable and has the same service levels. That's kind of what keeps me awake at the moment. And it's super exciting. That's why it keeps me awake, not because I'm worried about it, but because I'm so excited that we're moving somewhere in a different direction. Plug and play. I think it's okay to embrace having different partners that do different parts of the end-to-end life cycle of a meeting, whether it's the MRF, the web build, the attendee reg, or the delegate management. I think we'll see in the future some separation of that.
That's great. Wonderful. Thank you. Well, we're about to wrap up here, so I want to just make sure to mention for everybody to review the fundamentals of strategic meetings management that can be found under the GBTA Professional Development tab on the GBTA Hub. And I want to say thank you so much to Meredith and Ciaran today for your insight and your ideas and your technology forward thinking, and thank you so much for joining us. You have been listening to The Business of Travel, the official podcast of the Global Business Travel Association. For more information about GBTA and its work, visit gbta.org, and be sure to rate and review us wherever you get your podcasts. Until next time, thank you for listening.